We told you about, of course, the 34-count indictment that came down yesterday against one Donald J. Trump. He thinks it's a setup and a waste of time, a witch hunt. You've heard all of that. But there are other investigations going on concurrent with this one, those that could be maybe even more problematic for the former president. Robert Ray joins us right now, the former federal prosecutor. He was involved very much in the Whitewater investigation, knows of what he speaks. Robert, great to see you again. It's been a while. What do you make of this particular case, first off? Because I do want to get to those other ones that are probably more worrisome for the former president. But what do you think of this one?
I guess in a few words, Neil, I would say after some considered judgment and thought about this over the course of the last 24 hours, I think it's a poor exercise of prosecutorial discretion, particularly as it comes to a president. Most of this strikes me, and I hesitate to say it because they are felony charges and there are 34 of them, but the DA's office had to, look really, really hard to try to dress up what otherwise would be ticky-tack books and records misdemeanors to turn them into a felony with, I think, probably a flawed legal theory. We don't need to get into the weeds for, present purposes, today. And of course, that will be tested over a period of months. The only way to essentially show a prosecutor that it's a poor exercise of prosecutorial discretion to do what they did is to trust in the legal system that with a fair judge and a fair jury and a fair process, at the end of the day, this case will be made to go away. And so, that's what I think. But it's probably too early, ultimately, Neil, at this point to say that with any degree of certainty. But at the end of the day, thinking about it, I do think it's my judgment, and it's just one person's judgment. But I hope with the benefit of some experience, I think it was a poor exercise of prosecutorial discretion. That's my thought.
Interesting. Robert, you were one of the first to say that these type of cases can always veer from their original intent. If you think about Whitewater, it was about real estate deals and the like. It morphed into something famously apart from that. I don't know where this goes and where it ultimately leads, but I do know that there are these other cases looking into the president's role in the Georgia recount and whether he was strong-arming, flipping the results there, or his actions leading to the January 6th assault on the Capitol and his words and intent there. I could even go to the classified documents and how much was too much there. Any one of those seem to have a great deal more heft than this one, but what do you think?
Well, we don't know that, Neil. All we can hope for, and I think all that the former president and then now current presidential candidate Donald J. Trump has the right to expect, is that it will be a fair process. I'm concerned, like Kellyanne Conway is concerned, that, with so many investigations out there, it could lead to a situation of sort of death by 1,000 cuts. On the other hand, I don't think somebody should be run out of a presidential race as the result of investigations where I think the president has made a fair point that he is not being treated fairly or not being treated as if he were an ordinary citizen. Everyone's claim out there in the chattering class is that no person is above the law. And by the same token, everybody deserves to be treated fairly, even former presidents of the United States, which I think is where he's coming from, and he has a legitimate gripe. Ultimately, Neil, all these investigations and now this particular prosecution are going to impact the political process during a presidential election year. It's clear that this case, the one just recently brought in New York, is going to extend well into 2024. It is unavoidable that it will have an impact on the political process. I don't think that that's right. That's why I think it's in part, why I think it's a poor exercise of prosecutorial discretion. Ultimately, it should be for the voters to decide whether or not Donald Trump should be president again, not for prosecutors and not for juries and not for judges.
This is a dumb question on my part, but you've endured many over the years from me, Robert. But forget being indicted. It's being convicted that I wonder whether he could continue to pursue a presidential campaign, let alone take over the White House, even if he doesn't have to serve a conviction, if it ever came to that, in prison.
I guess the question is, will it ever come to that in time, before November of 2024? I expect that the defense in this case, if we're talking about just the New York case for the moment, is going to be a full exercise of the defense version of the full court press, which means that everything's going to be challenged and litigated. There will be resort to intervention by this judge and a motion to dismiss the indictment for a bill of particulars, possibly to recuse the judge, to recuse the prosecutor, to move the case to another venue. And all those things are going to be tested by the court system. And the court system itself is going to be on trial and will be tested, at various levels. I would be surprised if we have a resolution that you would consider final that would lead to a result, the one that you just contemplate, and that would all happen before November 2024. I would think that would be exceedingly unlikely. We'll see.
But in other words, they could just run the clock well into, filing all these motions well past the inauguration of whoever the next president is, right?
That's right. And if the president is elected, all this stuff, frankly, goes away. I can't imagine that this would be allowed to be sustained while the president were serving in office. And if he's not elected president or he doesn't win the nomination, then these proceedings will take their own course and will ultimately reach a conclusion. So, that's where I think things stand. But I think we will rue the day that we traveled down this path. I don't think it's healthy for the country. Like the mayor just stated, we've got more important things to be worried about. And I think we should focus, or try to focus as best we can, on those things. Not to the exclusion of all others.
Got it.
But with some perspective, recognize where the country's best interests lie.
Yeah, it is different. We always say the laws equal everyone under it, but it is a little different when it's the President of the United States or a former president and you're stopping traffic on the FDR drive so he can get to a courthouse. I've traveled the FDR drive many, many times, Robert, and they never stop traffic for me.
Well,
so
and to kind of follow with that analogy, stopping traffic in the political process is something that we should all be concerned about. I think that's where we need to keep our eye on the ball.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Robert, always good seeing you. Thank you.
Same here, Neil. Thanks very much. Be well.
All right, you too, Robert Ray, on all of that.